The first time I saw the house, I honestly thought there had been a mistake. The siding was warped and gray with age, the porch sagging like it had exhaled years ago and never inhaled again. One shutter hung crooked, tapping softly against the frame in the wind. The yard wasn't really a yard anymore, just a patch of stubborn weeds and cracked earth. My parents stood beside me at the curb, smiling like they'd just handed me a dream. "Isn't it charming?" Mom said, clasping her hands. Charming? I stared at the broken gutter, the boarded side window, the roof line that dipped slightly in the middle. Behind us, my sister Chloe's laugh floated from her car, bright, effortless. She leaned against the door of her brand new SUV, keys to her new apartment dangling from one manicured finger. "Yours has so much potential," she called cheerfully. "Mine's just ready." Ready? My throat tightened. I forced a smile. "Yeah, potential." Dad clapped my shoulder. "We want it to be fair." Fair? The word landed somewhere deep and tender, because fairness had always been the currency in our family, the thing I told myself existed even when it didn't feel like it. Chloe got new clothes first. Chloe got help with tuition. Chloe got the newer car when we were teenagers. But this was supposed to be different. This was adulthood, independence, a start. Mom pressed a folder into my hands. "The deed, it's yours." Yours. I held the paper like it might vanish. Chloe jingled her keys again. "Come see mine after, right? It's downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows." I nodded, still staring at the house that was now apparently my future. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself location didn't matter, condition didn't matter, that I was lucky at all, that this was love, just expressed differently. That night, alone inside, the house smelled like dust and old wood and something faintly metallic. My footsteps echoed in rooms stripped bare decades ago. The kitchen cabinet sagged on loose hinges. The bathroom tile was cracked like a spiderweb. But there was light, too. Evening sun pouring through the front windows in long amber bars. For a moment, I could see it the way Mom had. Warm floors, fresh paint, plants in the window. Mine. I slept on an air mattress in the living room, listening to the house creak around me like it was learning my presence. Days blurred into work and repairs, scraping paint, cleaning years of grime, watching tutorials at night about plumbing and drywall. My hands blistered, then hardened. I learned where the floor dipped, which window stuck, how the pipes groaned before hot water came. Chloe sent photos of her apartment constantly. Marble counters, rooftop pool, skyline sunsets. "You have to come over," she'd text. "It's insane." I always said soon, because every spare dollar I had was going into this place. Lumber, tools, secondhand fixtures. I ate cheap. I worked late. I told myself this mattered more. It did matter, because no one could say it wasn't mine. 3 months in, the house began to change. Walls freshened, floors revealed honey-colored wood under grime. The porch stabilized. I planted actual grass where weeds had been. Neighbors started waving. For the first time in my life, something solid around me existed because I built it. Then, one Saturday morning, while I was sanding the front door, a car pulled up. Mom's car. I wiped dust from my face, smiling automatically, that reflex that never quite goes away. But when I stepped on the porch, I saw they weren't alone. Chloe climbed out of the back seat, sunglasses perched in her hair. Dad got out last, holding another folder. Something in my stomach tightened. "Sweetheart," Mom called brightly, "you've done wonders." I laughed lightly. "It's getting there." They walked up the path slowly, surveying the yard, the paint, the door, their expressions strangely assessing, not admiring. Chloe ran a finger along the railing. "Wow, it actually looks like livable." "Actually?" I swallowed. Dad cleared his throat. "We thought we should check in." "Check in?" I repeated. Mom smiled too quickly. "Just to see how you're settling." I stepped aside. Come in." They moved through the house like inspectors, opening cabinets, peering at floors, glancing at fixtures. Chloe took photos. Mom murmured to Dad. No one sat. The air shifted. I felt it before I understood it, that subtle withdrawal of warmth replaced with something procedural. Finally, in the living room, Dad turned to me. "You've put a lot into it." "Yeah, I wanted to make it home." Another look passed between them. Mom's smile faded slightly. "About that." The words chilled. Dad held out the folder. "We need to discuss some arrangements." My pulse stuttered. "What arrangements?" Chloe folded her arms, watching me the way you watch someone about to be corrected. Mom spoke gently, too gently. "We didn't expect you to invest so much before we clarified." "Clarified what?" I whispered. Dad opened the folder, and I saw a document beneath the plastic sleeve. Dense, typed, official. Not the deed I'd been given. Something else. "Sweetheart," he said carefully, "this property was intended as a temporary transfer." The room tilted. "Temporary?" I echoed. Mom reached for my arm. "To until Chloe's housing situation stabilized." The words didn't make sense at first. They floated, detached from meaning. Chloe's housing. But she has an apartment. A brand new apartment. My voice came out thin. "She has a place." Chloe sighed, like I was being slow. "Yes, but this neighborhood is appreciating. Dad thought long-term it makes more sense for me to hold the asset." Hold? Asset? The house around me, scraped, painted, rebuilt with my hands, suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. I looked at Dad. "You said it was mine." He avoided my eyes. "We said you could live here." The distinction landed like a blade. "Live here?" I repeated. Mom squeezed my arm. "We always meant to transfer title to Chloe later. It's just cleaner that way." Cleaner? My chest constricted. "Later when?" Chloe shrugged. "Soon. I mean, you've already improved it. That's great." Improved? For her. I stepped back, the room spinning slightly. "So, what happens to me?" Silence. Then Dad said, practical, almost brisk, "You can stay a while, of course. We're not unreasonable." A while. The floor under my feet, the floor I'd sanded until midnight, suddenly felt unstable. Mom brightened artificially. "Think of it as helping your sister. You've always been so good at sacrifice." Sacrifice? The word cracked something open inside me, because it wasn't new. It was pattern. It was history. It was every time Chloe received and I adjusted. I looked around the room, my paint, my work, my sweat embedded in the grain, and then back at them. "You never meant it to be mine," I said quietly. No one answered, because they didn't have to. Dad closed the folder. "We just wanted to be transparent before paperwork changes." Paperwork changes. My pulse roared in my ears. Chloe smiled faintly. "Honestly, you should be proud. You've increased the value a lot." Value? I stared at her, at them, at the life I thought I was building, already being reassigned. And in that suspended, breathless moment, something in me began to shift. The silence stretched so long it started to hum. I could hear the refrigerator cycling in the kitchen, the faint tick of the cooling pipes in the walls, Chloe's bracelet clinking softly as she shifted her weight. My house. No, not mine. Not ever mine. Mom was still holding my arm, her fingers warm, familiar, the same hand that used to smooth my hair when I was little, the same touch that always came right before I was asked to understand something painful. "You're such a good daughter," she murmured. "You always see the bigger picture." I looked down at her hand on me, then slowly back up at her face. "What bigger picture?" I asked. Her smile tightened. family, equity, future planning. The words sounded rehearsed. Corporate. Like this was a meeting, not my life. Dad stepped in, voice firming. Chloe's career requires stability in a certain area. This property aligns with her long-term financial profile. I stared at him. I live here, I said. Chloe gave a small, indulgent laugh. Right now. Right now. Something inside my chest gave a small, audible crack. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. I turned in a slow circle, taking in the room again, the patched drywall, the painted trim, the scuffed floorboards I'd sanded on my knees. Every improvement I'd made suddenly felt like a receipt I'd accidentally signed for someone else. When were you going to tell me? I asked. Mom hesitated. We thought after you were settled. So after I fixed it? No, she said quickly, after you made it livable. Livable. For Chloe. My throat tightened. You gave her a new apartment. Chloe lifted a shoulder. It's not about new, it's about location. I nodded slowly, because now I understood. Hers was lifestyle. Mine was labor. Dad exhaled. We didn't expect you to invest emotionally. Emotionally? I laughed, a small, breathless sound that startled all of us. Emotionally, I repeated, because apparently sanding floors until your hands bleed was just sentimentality? Mom's voice softened. Sweetheart, you always make things more intense. There it was again, the reframing. My hurt, my effort, my attachment. Excessive. Complicated. Inconvenient. I looked at Chloe. Did you know? She met my eyes without flinching. Of course. Of course. The room tilted again, but I stayed upright. How long? I asked. She said simply, before they bought it. Before. So the day they handed me the deed, the smiles, the pride, all theater. I swallowed hard. You let me believe. You needed somewhere, she cut in lightly, and you're good at projects. Projects. I felt something cold slide into place under my ribs. Mom stepped closer. We're not taking anything from you. I turned to her slowly. You're taking my home. Her eyes flickered. It was never legally. I know, I said. The words came out steadier than I felt. Because now the truth was clear in a way it never had been before. I had been given permission, not ownership. Occupancy, not belonging. Temporary. Dad cleared his throat. We'll handle transfer respectfully, no rush. You have time to make other arrangements. Other arrangements? My ears rang. I tried to picture leaving, packing up tools, paint cans, plants in the windows, stripping away every trace of myself from walls that had learned my presence. It felt like being erased in reverse. Chloe wandered to the window, looking out at the yard. You really did increase curb appeal. I watched her silhouette framed in the glass, already inhabiting the space in her mind. My chest tightened. When? I asked. She glanced back. Soon. The word echoed. Mom squeezed my hand. We thought you'd understand. I looked down at our hands again. Hers soft, mine rough with work. Understand. Yes. I understood. I understood exactly where I stood in this family. I understood the shape of the sacrifice they assumed I'd make. I understood the quiet expectation that I would step aside again, gracefully, gratefully. What they didn't understand, what none of them saw yet, was the thing unfolding inside me now. Because the crack in my chest wasn't just pain, it was separation, a line being drawn. I lifted my gaze at Chloe. You want this house? She smiled faintly. It makes sense. I nodded once, then looked at Dad. And you're transferring it? Yes, he said. I inhaled slowly. The air tasted like sawdust and something ending.
Outside, a car passed. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Ordinary sounds in a world that had just shifted permanently. Mom searched my face. Say something. I met her eyes, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know if the words I was about to speak would make me the daughter they expected or someone they no longer recognized. I opened my mouth.
And for a second, no sound came out. All three of them watched me, waiting for the same thing they had always gotten from me: compliance wrapped in calm. The good daughter voice, the smoothing over, the quiet surrender disguised as understanding. I felt it there, the old reflex, rising like muscle memory. Then I felt something else. The line. Clear. Hard. Irreversible. I stepped out of Mom's grasp. The movement was small, but it landed like a crack through the room. Her hand stayed suspended in air for a moment before dropping. "I understand," I said. Relief flashed across her face instantly. Dad's shoulders loosened, Chloe's mouth curved, already victorious. They thought I meant yes. I let the silence sit just long enough for them to settle into that assumption. Then I finished. "I understand that you never intended me to belong here." The relief vanished. Dad's jaw tightened. "That's not what it is," I said quietly. I turned slowly, gesturing around the room. "You gave me a structure. You gave her a home. And you expected me to turn this into one. For her." Mom shook her head. "You're twisting." "No," I said. "I'm finally not." That startled them more than anger would have, because anger they could manage. Anger meant emotion. Emotion meant leverage. But this steady clarity, they didn't recognize. Chloe crossed her arms. "Look, we don't need dramatics. It's a property transfer." "Property?" I nodded. "Yes." I walked to the window, looking out at the yard I'd cleared with my own hands, the grass just starting to take root where weeds used to choke the soil, the porch posts I'd reinforced, the door I'd sanded smooth. I moved in here when it was barely habitable. I repaired the structure, stabilized the foundation issues, replaced plumbing sections, restored flooring, increased market value significantly. Dad frowned slightly. "We know you've done work." I turned back to him. "Extensive work." Mom's voice softened again. "Sweetheart, we appreciate—" "No," I said gently. "You appreciate the result." Silence. Because it was true. Chloe shifted. "You lived here rent-free." I held her gaze. "I improved your asset." Her eyes narrowed. "It wasn't, you said it yourself," I cut in, calm. "Asset." Dad stepped forward, voice firmer. "This is getting unnecessary." "Is it?" I asked. He hesitated. Because something in me had changed, and he could feel it. I walked to the small table near the wall and picked up a folder. Not theirs. Mine. I'd pulled it from the drawer earlier that morning without knowing why. Instinct, maybe. Or the quiet sense that something was coming. I held it loosely at my side. Mom watched it. "What's that?" I looked at her. "Documentation." Chloe scoffed. "Of paint receipts?" I almost smiled. "No," I said. Dad's eyes sharpened. "What documentation?" I took a slow breath. Because this moment, this exact moment, was the hinge everything turned on. Not just the house. My place in this family. My life going forward. I met his gaze steadily. Of investment, structural repair, property improvement, financial input. Mom blinked. "Why would you—" "Because," I said quietly, "I learned from you." That landed. Hard. Dad's mouth tightened. "Learned what?" I said, "That ownership isn't just what you're told, it's what you secure."
Chloe's smile faded. The air in the room shifted again, but this time not toward me being displaced, toward them losing certainty. Dad held out his hand. Let me see. I didn't move. Not yet. Because for the first time in my life, I understood something fundamental. They believed the power in this room belonged to them, because historically it always had. But history was ending. I walked slowly to the center of the room. My house. Yes, mine. Whatever paper said, whatever they intended, this place held my labor, my nights, my blood in splinters and calluses, my breath in the walls. And now, my decision. Mom's voice trembled slightly. You're not trying to complicate this, are you? I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who had always framed my losses as virtues, my surrender as goodness, my absence as maturity. No, I said softly. I'm clarifying. Dad's hand remained out. Give it to me. I held his gaze. And slowly, deliberately, I opened the folder. Inside were pages, photos, receipts, contractor estimates, materials invoices, repair records, before and after documentation, structural assessments, value comparisons, and one more document beneath them. One I had not yet mentioned. I watched his expression shift as he saw the thickness of it. Chloe stepped closer. What's all that? I met her eyes. Everything that turned this place from inhabitable to desirable. Her throat moved. Because now she understood the implication. Value wasn't theoretical anymore. It was quantifiable and traceable. Dad's voice cooled. Improvements don't change ownership. I nodded once. Not always, I said. Mom's fingers twisted together. What are you saying? I slid one page forward, not the last one, not yet. Just enough for them to see the scale. Dad's eyes moved over the numbers, then flicked back up to me. And for the first time since they'd arrived, I saw uncertainty there. Real uncertainty. You've invested a lot, he said slowly. Yes. Chloe's voice edged. So what? I held her gaze. So, I said quietly, this isn't the house you gave me anymore. Silence. Wind brushed the siding outside. Somewhere a car door slammed down the street. Inside, everything balanced on a knife edge. Dad's voice trembled slightly. What are you implying? I felt the final piece inside me settle. Not anger, not revenge. Agency. I'm saying, I answered, that before any transfer happens, I closed the folder gently, we're going to have a very different conversation than the one you planned. Chloe stared at me. Mom's lips parted. Dad's eyes hardened, calculating now, not assured. The power in the room had shifted. Not fully, not safely, but undeniably. I rested the folder against my hip, standing in the center of the home they thought they were reclaiming. And for the first time in my life, they didn't know whether I was about to step aside or make